Hey, good to see you. Thanks for coming. This is another episode of Wireframe brought to you by Design Systems House. I'm your host, Nadim Otto, and today we're going to be talking about spicy chicken. I know that's probably not what you're expecting, but I have a very special guest who really doesn't need any introduction in terms of the work that we do in our practice, but I'm going to have him introduce himself anyway. I'd like everybody to say hello to Brad Frost. Brad, thank you so much for being on the show today. I'm very looking forward to this. Go ahead, let the people know who the heck you are, as if they didn't already know.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Donnie. I'm Brad Frost, based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I make things. I help people. I do a lot of teaching, web design, development, design systems. I made a thing called Atomic Design. And as time has gone on, I'm just feel like changing what the heck I do all the time, and the circle is getting bigger. I do a lot of music and art and just kind of into creativity, I think, in general, and trying to help people cultivate their own creativity and live a more purposeful and fulfilling and creative life. And so I've gotten into things like podcasting myself, and I have a show called Wake Up Excited. And holy moly, yeah. But our latest kind of big adventures is I've been doing online courses to teach people about design systems and foundational stuff and design tokens, which you know a thing or two about. And we're doing a course right now on AI in design systems, which is its own big ball of wax. So
Yeah, sure is. Sure is. Yeah, I'm very looking forward to talking about that kind of stuff, obviously, in the show today. I mean, I think the first thing that I want to bring up today is spicy, getting spicy here, okay? And Brad and I didn't talk about this at the beginning of the show, but I'm going to bring it up because we're going to make him feel a little uncomfortable. The last interaction that Brad and I had publicly online. Brad, do you know what the last interaction was?
probably like a LinkedIn comment somewhere.
It is a LinkedIn comment. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna tell everybody.
All right.
So I had a blog post that I wrote recently that was reacting to the discourse that's online about people vibe coding design systems like this, right? Just like, oh, I have a design system. Look at me. I vibe coded a design system, whatever. And I made this post, basically, I'll say, honestly, gatekeeping a little bit in terms of the way that I'm describing this. But in reality, my feeling toward that is just by being very deliberate in the definitions that we have in the practice. It's something that ends up being loose. Like I know that when we talk about design tokens, we talk about semantic, right? We talk about semantic. Everybody throws semantic around. So I'm being very deliberate in this. But in posting that, Brad has a response to this, or he says, I think it was something of the effect of, it wasn't over. It was, oh, the hell it isn't. Right. I basically said, what you vibe coded is probably not a design system. And Brad's like, the hell it isn't. And I'm like, okay, if Brad vibe coded the design system, I believe it's a design system if Brad's done it. Right. There are absolutely exceptions to this in particular, but that's the last interaction we had. I was like, oh shit, I hit a nerve for Brad over there. So
that's the spicy. Yeah. Hence the spicy.
The spicy, exactly. So, I think I know what you're coming in from there, because I know I want you to maybe comment on this. I know your perspective, or at least I think I know your perspective on this, which is more inclusive, Right. Like I've been in one of your workshops before, and basically the way that I see you kind of cultivate the people around you is basically the idea of, yeah, you can do that. Right? Yes, you know, that's a way of going about this. You could do this, you could do that. You could do anything. It's a very positive outlook in terms of the way that I see you kind of empowering people to do whatever they want to do. Admittedly, yes, when I go ahead and I say, well, you probably didn't make a design system, not as positive as I think the way that you describe this stuff. So am I on the right track for the way that you kind of you know, promote this?
Yeah, I think in general it is, yeah, there is a plurality to a lot of this, but I think that you're also right in saying that, you know, the words we use carry meaning, and that's a lot of what we are after, is kind of seeking a shared meaning for language, and that's getting harder and harder by the day, and language changes all the time and over time, and depending on who you're talking to and what their context is and all of that stuff. So I've always I've always defined a design system as the story of how your organization designs and builds digital interfaces. And people have always been like, Brad, that's a bunch of bullshit. Like, like what a non-answer. That is like just such horseshit. Like, you know, what do I do with that?
Hmm.
But I feel like in this specific era, like I hate to say like, yeah, I was totally right. But at the same time, like I think that that story, right? When we talk about what a story is like this narrative, this shared narrative. Is like, how do we do things is increasingly what design systems are becoming, because the specific plumbing and the specific language and the specific wiring and like how all of that is working is increasingly just kind of like it's subterranean. It always kind of has been, but we've been more sort of, we've sweat those details for a long time, but increasingly we are getting to a point where we could just say, I want a new marketing homepage that does this. And so we're like telling the story by way of what comes out the other end, of like, is that our intention? Is that built using our conventions? Is that built using all of the hard-earned knowledge that we've used? So coming all the way back to these, you know, design.md files and stuff, I was 100% trolling you because I know you and I love you. But I think that it's like, that is a story, a very milk toast or insufficient story if we're really trying to exert any sort of like, you know, real like guide it in a real or informed or deep way. So a lot of that stuff is, it's a story, but it's a children's book.
Hmm. Yeah.
So it's a picture, but it's a cardboard book. It's got 12 pages in it, and there are exactly 4 words per, you know, page on this. So it's like, and you could do something with that. That is technically a book. That is technically a story. That is technically a narrative. It's just a shallow thing, but it does deliver results. Like I think that's the thing that we are still wrapping our heads around, is it's like, oh my God, you can say, do this. And just the fact that something came out the other end was impressive. But then you could say, oh, I want to just kind of define a handful of things that I want it to do. And by doing that little bit of guidance, I get something that feels closer to what I'm intending. And that's very, very interesting. And I think that that's what we're seeing, a lot of the enthusiasm and excitement around that specific trend, as people starting to get what it means to sort of start invoking context and starting to push and starting to sculpt these things beyond just like, make me a website and I really don't care what comes out the other end. It's like, oh yeah, like please use these brand values, or please use this typeface, or please use that, whatever. It's good. good.
It's good.
But again, children's book,
Yeah.
children's book, and it's not to diminish it. I get like I back to what you were saying, and I think that your depiction of kind of how I operate is usually it's like, well, what's your context? If you're my neighbor next door who works at a nonprofit, maybe that design.md file is sufficient for
Sure.
getting something way better than what they currently have out the door. She just showed me her website and holy shit.
Hmm.
So it's like, okay, well, yeah, sprinkle in a couple, hex values or font pairings or a vibe or, something to be inspired by and say something like this is going to get you further down the line than what they have right now. But if you're like, giant organization creating, managing, maintaining many different pieces of software across a vast ecosystem, you have people distributed all over the world and shit like that. Like, is that little MD file gonna do it for you? So a lot of it just really, it all kind of comes back to, it's just like, what is the story you need to tell?
Yeah.
And sometimes that children's book will get you there, but a lot of times it won't.
I think you're right on the money on that stuff. I think there's two things that I want to pull out from that observation, and I think the first thing I want to talk about is the definition that we have of design systems, right? Because the way that you're saying it about it being a story, I think is really great from a journey kind of point of view, right? The way that I've always said it is an agreement, right? Like this is the agreement that the organization has taken upon itself to say the buttons look like this, the way that we use the buttons is like this. All this stuff has come together in some way. And if that agreement is in the resources of a documentation, fine. If it's in the resources of an MD file, fine. If it's in the resources of the Figma file, all that stuff is just resources that represent the agreement of the organization.
Yep.
Now, the story part is really interesting because that shows history and also future, right? So the agreement thing, just thinking about it in the way that you describe it, the agreement that I've always had, I guess, or I shouldn't say always, but now I'm realizing it, that sounds like a moment in time, right? This is the moment in time in which this agreement has been codified. And sure, that agreement can change over time, right? And it happens all the time, but it changes over time. But to talk about it as a story now makes it more four-dimensional, right? It's not just the resources in this moment in time. It is the four dimensions, the time that it took across this whole thing. So I really like that analogy that I'm going to absolutely steal. Thank you, Brad Frost.
You nailed it though.
Yeah.
That's it because right. So we're human beings and we tell ourselves stories. Every moment of our existence, we're telling ourselves a story, right? We could talk about our upbringings. We could talk about our views and our point of views and our perspectives, and those things change, right? We live life, we get different experiences. We adapt because we're adaptable creatures, and that's what we do, right? If you have a healthy brain, you're able to take on new input, right? You get new experiences, you travel to different places, you encounter different kinds of people and thoughts and ideas, and you grow. And that is healthy.
Yes.
And when you have this thing that is three-dimensional, right, without that fourth that fourth axis of time, that's when you get into the things of it's like thou shalt not, and this stuff is set in stone, and that we've seen that same as you just set up the worst possible dynamics. Because what happens is whenever these things aren't living, breathing stories that can adapt and improve and evolve, well, you end up with a situation where somebody goes, I've tried to use this thing, I'm trying to make this thing, and I'm bumping into this wall, or I have this need. And they come to this design system as this, source of truth, as this agreement. This is I'm trying to be a good citizen. Like this is how we're supposed to do things. I want to do that. But hey, I have this thing going on. And I can't tell you how many times that results in the design system team just totally falling on their face and just making the worst possible decisions. It just torpedoing these relationships for the sake of theoretical purity, or saying like, no, but this is how it is, right? It's
Right.
so
The stone tablets that come down is,
yeah.
it's just like, oh, it's supposed to be like this. Well, it's like you didn't make the agreement. Where was the agreement in here? You just agreed in your little own bubble here, and there's all these other stakeholders that you missed, right?
Yep. 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 What I think is really fascinating, and quite literally right before this, me and my brother and our partner TJ Petrie, who is making our AI and design systems course with us, we were on a call and we ended up recording a lesson live because we were like, well, okay, we have our course website that we hurried out the door super duper quickly late last year in time for the holidays, because we wanted to like kind of get in front of like Black Friday, all that stuff. But we were just, just head down. There wasn't the real rigor and quality stuff that we usually like, but we're like, hey, having this out into the world versus not, that's more important than the quality. We'll get around to updating it afterwards. Well, at the time of this recording, it is May 6th. so months later, and so we've been head down, we've been producing the course content. It's been like, a lot of work. We've been cultivating this really great community and like all of this great stuff, but we've been honing and iterating over this stuff and thinking really deeply about this. So the outline that's on the course website doesn't reflect like the actual course outline that we're in the process of recording. It doesn't reflect all of the stuff that we have done, that we have now have 15 hours of videos, but we're also getting these questions left, right, and center. When's this going to be out? I don't understand what's going on. So we're like, damn, we need like a frequently asked questions thing, common stuff for a thing like this. And we're like, well, let's do this because this is us eating our own dog food and demonstrating that, like, yes, you could use design systems and AI together in order to help you make something like an FAQ section on this website. And better yet, we have our Notion database that has all of our sort of customer support in there. We've got all the emails and like all of that stuff that we can kind of like synthesize and extract the themes from and like kind of get the ball rolling on this thing. And it's really freaking cool. But what ended up happening is it got some things a little wrong on the first go. Whenever it did a dutiful job, like from a content perspective, it nailed it. From a content perspective, it nailed it, but it tripped up over the accordion part and just kind of like printed out like the heading and some text underneath it, so it wasn't an accordion. And so we're like, oh, we need to address that, because FAQ and accordion go together like peanut butter and jelly, whether that's like the best pattern or not, but it is for all intents and purposes. But anyways, I was like, okay, so we're here, we're inside of this context, inside of the product context. We were using the system. It tripped up over this thing. It got something wrong. And we were like, let's file that as an issue on our design system repo, which isn't the same thing as the thing that we are working in. But the thing that's so cool about all of this is that you now have like a unified interface, even if that interface is like a freaking terminal window, but it now like spiders out, and I could be like working in like 5 or 6 repos at the exact same time. But when I file that issue, what it did is it says like, here's the context by which this issue emerged, right? They're working on this website. it did this, it fell on its face. I got the typography wrong too. It was like too chunky.
Mm.
And it was like, oh, so we want to dial that down to this variant that they said is a better fit for that. And we actually want to make that the default for the accordion titles rather than the big chunky ones. So what it did in a totally different place, this is the stuff that's just like a pain in the ass for developers who are working on products across the board. It's like, yeah, sure, you could have like an issue template in GitHub, or say, here's your Slack or Teams channel. All right, like what's going on? Tell me all about it, or whatever. To just have it woven in to the work where I'm like simultaneously like using the system, altering the system, filing issues, improving it. It understands the context by which that originated. And when you do that, and you do that across a bunch of different things, all of a sudden you're like, oh, this story is like coherent. Like this is actually representative of like our lived experience using it and building it, and that connection all the way back to the like the origins of like atomic design, where I'm like, yeah, this stuff is like hierarchical, and like the smallest atoms build all the way up to like these pages, and they get used and they inform and influence one another. It's not a one directional thing. The pages inform and influence like the smallest bits, and the smallest bits inform and influence and build up to ultimately create the coherent and full experience. And we now, in this new era, have the actual ability. Like we've been kind of like theoretically doing this kind of connective stuff, but that's like a lot of stuff like gets dropped in between the seams. So I've been like starting to like talk about AI as this like kind of mortar that starts to kind of really sort of like bond everything together and connect it and strengthen it. Is really cool.
Yeah, goodness gracious. A lot in there again. um, I think one of the things that I want to pull out of that is fascinating hearing about the process about effectively dog fooding the course with the course materials in and of itself, which is fantastic. I think it's funny because the dog fooding thing from design systems, again, from the definition standpoint, I've always been very apprehensive about dog fooding the design system with design system docs. And I say that specifically because most cases, design systems for large organizations, they have a SaaS product, they have a dashboard, they have a profile page, all this other stuff. They normally don't have a documentation page for their users normally, right? Sometimes you'll have like, developer docs or whatever, but normally your application is a dashboard or it's a carousel or something. So it's always been very odd to me that people want to shove their design system into their documentation to use it to build a documentation when it's probably not built for that, So I want to use that kind of motion and ask this particular question because, in the work that I think both of us do, which is very, kind of local to our systems and being able to control all the facets about a particular thing, right? So, like as an example from my side, I have my own system that I work on that is able to make the rules and then implement the rules, and everything is all understood and agreed upon because it's only me or it's only a small
It's
team,
cool.
that
Yeah.
we're working on
Yep.
this like kind of
Yeah.
proof of concept. I'm sure the reaction to people that are looking at a process like this that you're describing about, the issue coming up with the context and being able to identify and potentially even address those things immediately for larger organizations that have a lot more moving parts that
Mhm.
are excited about this. Where is the friction for implementing something like this? Because any of us in the practitioner right now doing design systems has to look at this and go, yes, this is exactly going to help my workflow. And in fact, the design system report from Zero Height said, I wish I could automate more things, but more things are not automated and the teams are getting smaller. So how could these folks, I guess, smooth over the rough patches for larger
Yeah.
organizations other than of course working with your course right now, but is there a secret kind of starter that you could potentially share here?
Yeah, no, I think that you're right. And to address it, the like what's the thing that's preventing it is what you defined as a design system earlier, which is agreement.
Hmm.
And I think that increasingly, you having your own system where you are the overlord of it all, I guess it definitely like helps, and those are very good things because you're able to learn, and we're dealing with that on our own thing where we're like, man, we are cooking
Yeah.
right now because we have, it's like me, my brother, and a handful of people who are kind of learning the ropes while also working with it. So it's
Hmm.
like we kind of have some like kind of like student apprentice, more like kind of junior folks kind of coming in. So it's like a really cool dynamic because it kind of feels like this teaching college kind of thing a little bit. But we're all kind of like going through it together, but there's not a lot of, well, I disagree with that, right?
Hmm.
Because it's like, oh, we're a super small outfit, and that the two main people that are going to disagree are brothers and shared a bedroom our entire childhood. So it's like we have a way of working through conflict. We will
Yeah,
say.
you've dealt with it for a couple of years. A couple of those
Yeah,
times together,
yeah.
you figured that out a little bit. Sure.
But yeah, so it is in that it's in that agreement, right? And you said it really wonderfully earlier, and I think that is the blocker for a lot of things. But this is also where what I was just discussing with about like the GitHub issue, and to kind of have these tools that can supercharge the context and surface that stuff and often articulate it way better than a human can. But not only do it better, but also more immediately and less laboriously, right?
Right.
What you end up with, in order to get to agreement, you need to have an understanding and a shared understanding. And that's half the battle. And that's why relationships, and that's why this stuff matters so much, because like the people who need to work with one another are often incentivized by different things, rewarded by different things, punished by different things, right? So you have the keepers of the system who are incentivized to protect it in its integrity, and you don't want to just have any rando coming in saying, oh yeah, we need to make the buttons all purple all of a sudden, right? And if that's not your brand palette or whatever, so they're incentivized to protect that. But then you have these other people that have these needs, they're trying to use it for a specific reason, and therein lies the conflict. So historically, we've really had to rely on just, well, let's say the demeanor, the vibes
Hmm.
of the humans to really ultimately arrive at that shared understanding. And what we've seen go south is whenever those people aren't vibing well together. And again, it's just the thou shalt not, right? The stone tablets. And then all of a sudden, it's like, then we're off. We're gonna go figure out a way to solve our problems that doesn't involve you and dealing with you.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
so back to this idea is like AI as mortar, was very, very, very fascinating stuff. And like we're unpacking this at like the the deepest of levels, I think, is that it's like there's a real irony that the introduction of AI is maybe the biggest boon for human collaboration that I've seen in my entire career.
Hmm.
So it's a very strange place to be.
Yeah.
Because
Goodness.
all
Yeah.
of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, what? Like this thing that we have seen just like decimate so much humanity, and now it is like stealing all of this stuff away. So, all of like the real legitimate downsides of this stuff, but at the same time, it is a tool that can be deployed in service of bringing people together, a tool that could be used in service of betterment, of making things better, making the products better, making our users experience better, making the mission of our organizations better, making the world better, maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah.
You mentioned something in that was about, this person wants to make this thing purple, and it immediately causing some conflict, you know.
Mhm.
And that's a traditional thing that comes in. I mean, traditionally before AI, what would happen? You would have, the design system, and you have someone who come in, maybe it's person who doesn't know better, or maybe they do know better and they're just doing it on themselves.
Yeah.
And, they, in the dark corner of their artboard, they'll make the purple button, and then all of a sudden it appears in the product, because the developer was like, oh, I guess this is the new thing we're going to do, and move on, et cetera, et cetera. And we find that those buttons, and we do the button audit again. There's 20 different buttons, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what happened traditionally.
Mhm.
Do you see a world where this ability of AI to basically be this, all the arms coming out and being involved in everything that's happening,
Mhm.
is there a world where we can embrace that chaos, where we can say, okay, well, this person is deliberately making a new button and wants to, try it out in the ecosystem and make it, see if it works out or whatever. I'm thinking about this as like, well, maybe we turn up a little bit of the influence in there. If many people are doing these buttons, maybe this needs to be the new button as opposed
Yeah.
to the button that's in the system. So instead of having a person who, again, Stone Tablets comes in and says, no, this is the button, what if it
Yeah.
organically comes to be from people deciding that this is the button that they want? We see that with, the system of systems, right? You have all these little child systems that are off of the larger system, and these child systems, they don't have the visibility across, generally speaking. What if they did? What if you had this, the core system saw all of the behaviors outside and said, whoa, there's 3 different sister systems that are all using a very similar button. Maybe we should take all of that into account and bring that as the button. But not only that, have it as the button and then give it back to them as the button, all in one shot, right? So it takes out a lot of the legwork that we would normally be doing, all that silly audit stuff that, oh my God, historically is just like
Yeah.
the job.
Yeah.
This is what I think we could be doing in this space. Do you have any opinions, thoughts, about those things?
Yeah. Yes. Like
Yes.
100%. And that's just like, that's just one side of it, right? There's the just like crawling, spidering, ongoing sort of monitoring of that stuff that's historically been supremely elusive, right? It's the whole, yeah, it's just the darkness, the fog. It's playing a video game with the fog of war. It's like you're just stumbling around and then getting surprised by yet more purple buttons hiding out in more corners. And it's just like, yeah, that this is where this idea of the scale of this stuff and the interconnectedness of this stuff is I think really important, because that's just one facet of it. So I'll sort of say some other stuff, which is like, and then there's the stuff that's actually out in the world,
Bingo.
the actual like products that real human beings are using. And these are the people that are having a fucking frustrating time using your digital products. And they will tell you that stuff. Sometimes, if you ask nicely in your NPS score modal window, or oftentimes it's just through this kind of whether it's abandoned carts or any other sort of like signal that you're paying attention to or not paying attention to, these people get frustrated and they leave. And so you have all of that context, and then you have all of this other context, and then you have the context of the emerging rebrand and the emerging redesign. And what these things are particularly good at is kind of corralling and synthesizing and doing a bunch of the stuff that like you didn't consider. And that is a very weird place to be. But as time goes on, the biggest thing that I've found to be just, it blows my mind regularly, is the thing that I've just kind of baked into how I interact with these things, which is tell me what I haven't been considering.
Oh, oh my God, yes, I love that. I absolutely love that, because the thing that I wanted to bring up in this in what you were talking about there is egocentric design. Okay,
Mm,
so
yeah.
what I see very often is in the space here is that we have people that are claiming that they're solving problems, but they're solving their own feelings about that problem as opposed to specifically speaking with users, getting that MPS feedback or any of the particular feedback about the actual users, and
Yeah.
trying to solve that particular piece. I mean, this is a lot of the reason why I hate modals. Modals, I feel like, are just anti-user and just very lazy as a response to some feature that we need to add. It's just like something that I just personally don't enjoy. Now, knowing that kind of feeling that we're seeing out there with this egocentric design, now what we're seeing is a lot of the possibility of self-wear, where screw you as a designer out there that thinks they know better about my experience and my goals and my needs. I'm just going to go ahead and vibe code my experience myself. It'll be exactly what I want it to be. I mean, admittedly, even screw your design system, right? I'm going to have my own preferences. I mean, this is, you know, peak inclusive design. This is what
Yeah.
we're sitting on right now. So when I mean, I don't feel like it's an if. I think this is a when that this really comes to a head and gets, massively adopted as a direction. What does that say for the people who are sitting in roles right now that are doing design? Even the ones that are not egocentric, even the ones that are trying to, you know, legitimately solve user needs. What is this? What's the next step for these folks? How do they stay relevant in this direction that's moving very, very quickly?
Yeah, no, it's a damn good question, and I think that what you said earlier about the purple buttons of like, oh well, what if we go from policing that behavior to maybe empowering it or embracing it? I think that what this moment is doing is just stripping away just layer upon layer upon layer of just shitty paint, and
Mm,
we're getting down to the original hardwood floors, which is just like, what is the value of the thing that you are doing? So much of so much of the landscape that of the products that people use every day, they're using it because they have no choice.
right.
They got boxed into this particular walled garden, and to get out of it is good luck canceling your subscription. You got a call for that one, right? So that goes away, and you're right. This gets into like a real empowering moment for human beings, and I'll put it through a very specific lens: accessibility.
Yeah.
Accessibility is anyone suffering from a disability will tell you that their specific experience is maybe different than how people will describe it as, uh, you know, oh, this person's in a wheelchair, or this person's blind, or this person can't use this arm, or this person, whatever. And you put that, we put them into these buckets, and it's dehumanizing, right? Because it's ultimately, you know, my cousin in a wheelchair has a different experience, and like, because of the specific nature of her injury that she endured and stuff. And so her specific needs is different than the next person who is technically also in a wheelchair, but that gets flattened,
Right.
especially by designers who are like literally just like thinking about design in accessibility and design as a checkbox to
Hmm.
hit, as a thing to get through. So it's just like, okay, we're gonna like flatten this out. These are rich human lives with very specific, needs, and very specific like opportunities, and nobody is serving them because they are an individual human being. So, put through that lens, do I want the my cousin to have a puzzle piece, right? Or many puzzle pieces of software that just like perfectly matches her needs. 137,000%. Like, like all day, every day, fuck, consistency, fuck, like, any of that. Like, what's all that for when the person who is coming to a thing gets the thing that they want in the format that they want without any other crap in the way, right? This is user-centered design, like through and through. So what does the designer's job become? Is to make that happen. It's a lot of work to make that happen, because it is a relinquishing of the ego. It is a relinquishing of control. It is a relinquishing of a lot of the stuff that we think is the job of design. But at the end of the day, the job of the designer is to make things that people use, that people want to use, that people love to use, to make people's lives better, to make the world better.
So, Brad, I'm going to have to retitle this episode to Fuck Consistency. Could you imagine? Could you imagine Donnie D'Amato and Brad Frost on a podcast and where it's titled Fuck Consistency? Could you imagine? No, but you know what, though? I'm 100%, 137,000% behind you, clearly. And the thing that I want to talk about in this in particular is that, I had a kind of a come to Jesus moment thinking about AI and my role and what's going on and all this other stuff. And I'm like, I'm seeing what's happening. What's happening here is that the even just the chat interface that, normal users, my mother is in ChatGPT conversing back and forth or whatever, getting answers, right? This interface that is no longer bound to buttons and form fields and drop downs and all this other stuff. She's achieving her goals simply by chatting, right? Now, I'm thinking about the reason why I started doing all this. And the reason why I started doing this is from my experience in sculpture. And I loved interactive sculpture. I would, want to build a piece that a person could touch and it reacts to them and they would have an emotion about it. So really, sure, the art was involved, but it was more about the interaction and the experience that the person had, right? So I ended up taking that into the digital because it was a lot, more cost effective. One computer do lots and lots of things. But I know that people are uncomfortable with this AI kind of experience because they've came from an artistic background and not the user experience background. So I'm looking at this change in the ecosystem and going, okay, if the new user experience is chatting, right? We're effectively back in the terminal again, but it's a lot loosey-goosey in terms of the programming we're talking about. If that's the experience that I need, that users are having, that needs to achieve goals and stuff like that, then that sounds like what my new role has to be. At least makes for me particularly,
maybe
right? For me particularly,
that's the current paradigm. Is that, and what we're finding is that wall of text is pretty lousy from both a creator perspective and from a user perspective, right? So I think that like this is the thing. First of all, I freaking love that. And I'm sorry to like just jump in, but I do think that it's like you're right in saying it's like, yes, like this, the point of interaction is changing, but you're 100% right that at the end of the day, all of this has to do with human experience.
Bingo.
Like that's it. What's all of this for? It is the human experience. What is real in this day and age? What is real as time goes on? That's going to be a lot harder to answer. But what is real is human experience, right? So how do you facilitate good user experiences? How do you facilitate good human experiences?
Exactly, and that's what I'm now focusing on. So I've said this in another earlier episode of Wireframe, but I'm now considering a significant pivot into my focus. So as people know, I've been very much in design systems, very visual, very GUI kind of experience. Been doing web design for a long time on the web. But now with this shift, I mean, I think of like telephone operators, that job doesn't exist anymore. You had to change into something else. So I'm seeing this and trying to get ahead of it. And now I've been fortunate to learn of this role called model design, or sometimes called model behavior design, model behavior architecture. This idea is effectively what is the the experience system level with an agent and a user, right? So that user is interacting with this agent, this AI, and it's, responding, and the way that it responds, the voice and tone, the trust and safety, all of these facets of this conversation, right? Conversational UI, that's a thing that's happened for a little while now. Content design, all that stuff. That I think is gonna have to be my new practice, right? I think what I'm seeing here is that companies out there are going to lean more in. I mean, we're seeing it already. They're leaning into these chat experiences, really driving the core of much of their experiences, right? If the person doesn't know how to center text because the menu is hidden somewhere, well, I could just tell my agent to center the stupid text, right? And I want that experience, that main experience that we're seeing with lots of folks, I want that to be consistent. I want that to have the voice of Home Depot or the voice of Delta. I want that, whatever I want the healthcare experience as opposed to the lawyer experience. All of that stuff is now the new system level cohesion, right? Fuck consistency. Okay, fuck consistency from a GUI standpoint, but from the trust standpoint of I'm still talking with the same, or working with the same interface or experience that I just was 15 minutes ago, that trust is still important, right? That's where the consistency came in from the visual side from a long time. Now,
Mhm.
because it's less visual and more conversational, we need, I think, or at least me personally, I'll speak on behalf of myself, I think I need to learn more about bringing in the consistency and the trust from the user experience that we are now seeing as a new experience that everyone's having, in the day and age of 2026. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think like what I'm hearing you say, and tell me if this is accurate or not. It's like you want to work in a place where you can influence the good outcomes,
100%.
right? And when the shift happens, whether that's going zigging, zagging, zig left, zag right, or tunnel deeper, or something like that, then going to where you can have a positive impact, it feels good. So yeah, so like I think that's good. I think that one of the things that and by all means, like you should pursue what is listen to what is exciting, follow your energy, and if that's where it's going, like that's usually good.
Hmm.
Follow your energy, everybody. That is the best signal you can listen to, your positive energy. What has you excited? What has you waking up excited? That's the reason why my podcast is called that, because that's the thing. That's the smell. But I will put this out here, because this paradigm is not a one-to-one thing, which is UIs are dead.
Hmm.
Here is this like chat interface, and that's the future. What is really hard for us to understand, because we've been coming from a place of jQuery is dead and here's React.
Sure.
Sketch is dead and here's Figma. It's like, oh, now this is here and this is here. And what this is a brand new paradigm. And unlike here's horses and now here's cars, this is a one to many type of paradigm shift. And this is something that our human brains have a very difficult time processing and understanding, because it is chat, it is interfaces, it is visuals, it is all manner of every single modality. Like just yesterday for our course, I was wrapping up chapter 1, where I was just kind of like just doing a kind of an intro to LLMs in general. I'm like, okay, yeah, so we all know the drill. Here's like interacting with, ChatGPT or whatever, and you get an answer back. Okay. Well, what I decided to do this. I was like, okay, this could be fun. I'm like, start with Claude. I said, make a medieval poem about atomic design. And it went ahead and did that. Pretty table stake stuff. I'm like, cool. So then I pasted that into ChatGPT and I said, please generate me an image of this poem of atomic design set in medieval times. And then from there, I went into Suno, which I haven't used, so we can talk about that. And I basically said, please turn this image of this poem of this medieval thing into a rock opera for atomic design. And sure enough, it did it. And it created a bunch of lyrics and all of that. I then went over into DaVinci Video Editor and I said, please generate a video clip from the trailer of the rock opera about this medieval poem of atomic design. And it went ahead and did that. And then I downloaded all of those files and then I opened up Claude Code and I hooked up TJ's Figma console MCP and I said, please design the website for the rock opera about this medieval atomic design thing. And it went ahead and designed that thing. And then I said, please now turn that into a real website. And it did that. And I said, now make a new token theme for the space sequel that's set in the year 3087. That is a space ballet. Just update the tokens, but do that in both the design and code. Now, what it did, and I fed it in those assets into Claude Code after I went through this gauntlet, and I just fed it in there just to inform the design, right? Mm-hmm. But what happened whenever it built the website, it put the trailer in, it put the video in functioning, it built an audio player, and sure enough, it plunked in the generated track that I did out of Suno without asking, without anything like that. And it's just like, okay, well, here we are. Mm-hmm. And then and then in the next breath, I could say, make this about, zebras on Zambonis, and it would do it. Right. So this is the thing that we're very ill-equipped, cognitively speaking, like just how, like, we are orders of magnitude out of our depths, like in terms of like just at a neuroscience level, right? Like this is very difficult for us to process because this is not a one-to-one. This is not a this to this. This is a this to literally everything.
Yeah.
And that's a weird place to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I think when you were, well, the first thing is I think in terms of the first thing you said about UI being dead, I'm definitely not saying UI is dead. There's going to be places for UI. And in fact, I think the way that you described it is really great because it's actually talking about expressing yourself. Right. There's something about like, how did that person even get to the main chat interface? Well, there was something that drove them as an emotion to get there. And that's going to be some artistic parts in there. It's going to be some sales, some marketing. There's going to be more humans in there, right, that are trying to drive to create an emotion. And you can absolutely use AI to do that, just like Brad was talking about, right? And now, the thing that I want to ask you is that was that I'm going to say, quote unquote, manual process of you going into one application and the next with the resources from the before? Because I've seen the node based editing that like Free Pick, or I think is Magnetic now, had, where you basically start somewhere and you can kind of, trace out with these nodes and edges to affect the final result. So I'm imagining like, okay, you started with the poem, right? Poem about design tokens, but you could have potentially had this node-based editor that sets up and says, okay, instead of it being about design tokens, it'll be about drop downs. And it would just, the whole process that you just kind of orchestrated could come out the other end. Is that something that you've experimented with at all?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's I generally I'm following what you're saying there, and because I was using this as kind of like a teaching tool, I
Oh,
was going sort of hop to hop there. But just straight, just to say it, it's like straight out of the box. So like I went into it at, like I came out the other end kind of like simultaneously, like, you know, my eyebrows like glued to the top of my head, but also, you know, it was simultaneously like really impressive, and also like it rattled me, because like it caught me off guard despite working with this stuff for a little while. It's, you might think, by way of like this conversation, that I'm like some, you know, like uh you know, I'm all in techno optimist kind of thing. No, far from it, really. It's like, I think that I'm through my stages of grief because I have been working with it for so long. I kind of got like inducted and had to process those feelings for earlier. But anyways, like there's a sequential bit to this, but then yeah, you could easily extrapolate the fact that you could just be like, oh yeah, here's just the package that is just, hey, make a new business, and you know, out comes the other end at all of the things that a business needs. Here's the t-shirt design, here's your little igloo cooler, you know, with your logo on it. Here's your website, here's your native apps, here's your whatever. And it's like, that's like, it's here effectively, you know, the pieces of it are here. And that's why it was like pretty wild to kind of do. Like, I think that all of us have seen a chat, all of us have seen image generation, all of us have seen video generation, all of us have seen kind of like the requisite pieces, and everybody, you know, reacting to those individual pieces. But I think that, yeah, what we're seeing now is, and what you can easily see, is all of this stuff getting threaded together and stitched together. And that's simultaneously just bananas, and can be empowering. But like, I think that like when we get down to bedrock is what you were describing earlier, where it's just like, okay, yeah, like what is it that we're doing? Like what is the value that we're providing? When the mechanics of creation go down to zero, what we are creating becomes really, 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 really important.
oh,
Really important.
you know what? I don't think I could end it on any better note than that, honestly. That was excellent. Thank you, Brad. Um, let's wrap up here by Brad. Go ahead and let the folks at home know anything that you were plugging. Obviously, the course, but anything else that you're working on that you want the folks at home to know, to be a part of, and you know, where they find you on the internet, all that good stuff.
Yeah, I appreciate that. But yeah, I'm, you know, bradfrost.com. It's long in the tooth, but that's next on the docket once this course is done. But yeah, I have a show called Wake Up Excited, where I am exploring a lot of these things, and just, yeah, creativity and humanity, and trying to, you know, live a better life, and hold multiple thoughts in our heads at the same time, and dig into nuance and deeper stuff, as well as kind of brass tacks stuff as well. And, you know, kind of just exploring all of the different things that make us human, and get us out of the bed excited in the morning. So yeah, I'd plug that. But yeah, our meat and potatoes, like the way I'm feeding my family, is with these courses. So AI and Design Systems is the name of our course, and we're like rolling it out on like as we record things, we're just releasing them, and then we're basically like a month out before like the whole thing is done. So would love it if you check that out.
Killer. Super. Well, again, thanks so much for Brad for being on the show. Of course, yes, help feed Brad's family by buying a course when that's available. I think, yeah, we'll wrap it up for today. So thank you so much for watching today. Before you go, please help out the show by smashing that like and subscribe button, just to get notified the next time that we go live. And feel free to continue the conversation on the official Design Systems Discord by going to discord.ds.house. There it is on the bottom. Play nice in those comments, and I'll see you on the internet. Bye.